He gave him a question. He said, is al-hammam halal or haram? And the Sheikh was very upset, and he just left. You know? In this mosque, we are different nationality here. You know, I'm Algerian, there is brothers from Jamaica, different nationality, different ID. In Algeria, we don't have this problem. We are all, 80% we are Maliki, you know. Arrived to this country, you know, you've got different brothers from different madhahib, you know. But what I want to ask you is, I can see groups there, you know, talking about wudu all the time, you know. A group there, tafsir, you know, a group there. What can we do to this deen here in this country? What can we do? I've read a book about Hassan al-Banna, rahimahullah, and how he organized his group. What can we do here in this country?
In this mosque, at least.
To start start from here, inshallah. Yeah, Sheikh, anyone.
Sheikh Quick.
Well, this.
No. What we want to say, we begin from here. This is the station, so we start from here.
You know, I think that
he's the one who understands what goes here. Yeah. So he's the one who
to answer. Then give him the mic.
Well, you know, I think generally there's a problem, you know, in the ummah, in the sense that we have numbers, we have history, we have wealth, we have many things. But, you know, to really, you know, begin a revival of Islam, we need a complete ihya, you know, to put life back into the deen. You know, and it all begins inside of ourselves. Because the Prophet ﷺ is saying, you know, in the fil jasadi mudra, إِذَا صَلَحَتْ صَلَحَ الْجَسَدُ كُلُّ. That there is a lump of flesh, if it is sound, the whole body is sound. وَإِذَا فَسَدَ فَسَدَ الْجَسَدُ كُلُّ أَلَا وَهِيَ الْقَلْبُ. If it is corrupted, the whole body is corrupted. That is the heart. So our intentions, our hearts, you know, what is inside of us. This is a crucial thing now. And there are some serious issues we have. Diseases of the heart, like pride, hasad, jealousy,
hatred,
right? Ghadab, this kathat of ghadab, we get angry and over emotional, right? And so these things, this shuh, this greed, these things, you know, we have to look inside of ourselves and really start to do things to humble ourselves. With pride, for instance, you know, when scholars look at this, you know, the first thing we have to think about is pride in the sense of, you know, our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That really we come from a humble place and we will return to a humble place. And if we look at our lives and we look at what happens to us as we get older, why are we proud? You see? But secondly, they say if we can't be humble, you know, from our understanding, then do something to humble yourself. Because if you look at the Prophet ﷺ, you will see, even though he's receiving revelation from above 7 heavens, you know, he builds the masjid, he helps to build himself, carrying rocks. And, you know, some friends of mine went to India once, and they were visiting a scholar of hadith. And they came into the house, and they sat down, and an elderly man came out, and, you know, he gave them water, and they washed their hands, and then he brought food, and they ate their food. And then they said, okay, we're finished. Where's the sheikh? 10 minutes later, the same man came out and sat down. He said, I'm the sheikh. So you see what he did? If he had any pride inside of himself, he killed it inside of him. Because he was their slave. Right? He served them. And then he took his position, of course, when he started to talk about hadith, he was above them. You know, but the pride, you know, has to be dealt with. And that means that, you know, in simple building things, building the masjids, you know, being, you know, simple efforts, we all have to be involved in these, you know, type of efforts. So the ihya, the tajdeed begins inside of ourselves. From there, it should start to affect our character. We have to put more emphasis on character. For a long time, we put our emphasis on ibadat. And we teach the children, how to make wudu, how to make salah, and you'll see many people, as you say, they sit around and they study these issues of ibadah, and they learn how to argue with each other, and to debate one over the other and arguing. But now, the character. The Prophet ﷺ said, in the riwayah in the Muwatta of Imam Malik, he said, بُعِثْتَ لِأُتَمِّمَ حُسْنَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. I have been sent to complete the best in character. So it's not just to make salah. Why do we make salah? These are some of the questions. What is coming out of this? You see, so we have to put just as much emphasis on the rituals of Islam than we do on the character. What are we doing with the rituals? If we learn aqeedah, how do we implement this aqeedah? If we learn fiqh, what are we doing? A person fasts, and if you ask this brother, break your fast at 5:27, and he looked at the prayer chart and it said, no, at 5:30. If you try to give him some water, he'll fight you. Alhamdulillah, he doesn't want to do that. But then he breaks his fast, and then he starts backbiting the imam, scandalizing somebody else. And not realize that ritual he did, backbiting somebody, scandalizing somebody, cursing someone is as bad, as breaking the fast. Because the Prophet ﷺ said, La yadkhul jannah namam, that the one who carries namima, that this serious, scandal on a person will not enter paradise. So the character, it should, our characters. We need to emphasize this as much as we emphasize wearing the clothes and making the salat on time. Then this should affect our mu'amalat. The interpersonal relationships have to start to change. So it's not just what I do in the masjid. When I leave the masjid, if I have a shop, do I raise the price? Do I make salat in the masjid and then sell alcohol in my shop? Right? The contradiction. So what do we do in our business dealings, in our family dealings? Right? It's got to reach this level too. And these are some things we can all start to work on ourselves. Right? We can start to look at ourselves, criticize, what we did last year. We're entering a new Islamic year. Right? Look what is my character like now? What am I doing, with my family? You can gauge a community, really where it's going, if you look at the condition of the sisters. If the women are oppressed, if the families are breaking up, if divorce is rampant, right, then the community got a serious problem, man. We have to have healthy families, stable society, stable relationship with the children. And we can work on all of this now. But we have to be humble, man. This takabbur, this arrogance and pride, we have to take it out of our heart. We think because I am a man, or because I am tall, or I am strong, I have power over you, right? This has got to come out of our heart. The Prophet ﷺ, was a humble person, man. People used to come to Medina looking for him, and they would be shaking, trembling. And when they met him, they didn't want to leave him. Right? They see a halaqah of knowledge, they say, they look at the halaqah and say, which one of you is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? They couldn't tell by just looking. When he started talking, then they knew. So this humility in ourselves, right? Focusing on our intentions, our character, our interpersonal, relationships, our dealings, then we can bring alive the rituals. If we remain on these rituals and argue about these little points, right? Forgetting the character, right? Then we will, argue to the day of judgment. This is where the Yahud, went astray with their Pharisees arguing over the rituals. They lost, the spirit, of their deen. And we don't want to fall in that, especially now in this very critical time, where there are many youth who are going astray. They're leaving the deen. So we have to think about alternatives, right, for the youth. What are we going to do with the youth in this masjid? What are we going to do in the community? We have to start seriously thinking about practical solutions, right, to our problems. And then, we move gradually in our knowledge so we understand, the religion itself. Strong jama'ah, right? And, we need to, our relationship with each other has got to change. right? It's really important now.
Let me just, once you mentioned the madahib, let me chip in with a point in relation to the madahib. Abu Hanifa, madhab Hanafi, Malik, Malikiya, Shafi'i, Shafi'iyya, then Ahmad bin Hanbal, Hanbaliyya. In the first place, all of them did not live in the same city at the same time. If you follow the writings of these great scholars, you realize that Abu Hanifa falls short in terms of hadith. Of all the madahib, Abu Hanifa, not that he did not have access to hadith, but because in his area were a lot of Khawarij, Shia, who were concocting lies that the Prophet ﷺ said this, said this. So he was very particular in the use of hadith. So he relied more on qiyas, the use of analogy. If you come to Imam Malik, he stayed in Medina, very lucky. He had access to a lot of hadith. That all the three Imams, they had access to a lot of hadith. But when Imam Malik met Abu Hanifa in Medina, listen to his comments about the great man. He said, if you had a rock in your hand, Abu Hanifa would be able to argue his case out for you to be convinced that it is a diamond in your hand. Indicating the extent of the person's intelligence. What I want to say is that they had respect for one another. Just like the Sahaba, they respected each other, they recognized the talents each one had. And that is what we don't have today. As our scholar indicated, we undermine each other. Let's note that Ibn Abbas, during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, at the time of the death of the Prophet, he was 13 years. And Abu Bakr ruled for 2 years. But the young boy was loved so much by Umar ibn Khattab. But the young man, as a kid, enjoyed the prayer of the Prophet. The Prophet prayed for him, Allahumma faqihu fi din wa allimhu ta'wil. Oh Allah, let this small boy understand the religion, wa allimhu ta'wil, and let him know the commentary, the interpretation of the Quranic verses. And in another narration, he said, Allahumma atihil hikmah. Oh Allah, give him wisdom. And indeed, he was blessed with abundant wisdom. And Umar knew it. So anytime Umar was going for the Council of Elders meeting, those with long beard, 80 years, 70 years, 65, he would take the small boy 15 with him. And some of them started protesting that we also have small kids in our homes. Then Umar said, I want you to know his status. I want you to know who he is. Then on one occasion, Umar read, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ وَالْفَتْحُ وَرَأَيْتَ النَّاسَ يَدْخُلُونَ فِي دِينِ اللَّهِ أَفْوَاجًا فَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ وَاسْتَغْفِرْ إِنَّهُ كَانَ تَوَّابًا. And then Umar asked the Council of Elders, what do you think to that? These verses, what do they mean? And they said, we are Arabs. We understand it the way you understand it. Clear language. إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ up to the end. Literal understanding. Then he turned to the young boy at 15. He said, well, my position is different from those old people. Then they started to set up, well, bomb is coming. Real intelligence and wisdom at work. He said, listen to the verses very well. إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ وَالْفَتْحُ. When the help and the victory of Allah come, وَرَأَيْتَ النَّاسَ يَدْخُلُونَ فِي دِينِ اللَّهِ أَفْوَاجًا, and you see people entering into the religion of Allah in groups. فَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ وَاسْتَغْفِرُ. Then glorify the name of your Lord and ask Him for forgiveness. إِنَّهُ كَانَ تَوَّابًا. Because He is oft forgiven. Then Ibn Abbas said, every prophet was sent with a time frame within which he had to invite people to the way of Allah. So if people had agreed, accepted his message, and are entering into the religion in groups, it means he had accomplished his mission and had to go back to his Lord. So that chapter was revealed to the Prophet as a signal to the Prophet that he would have to pack his bag and baggage and go back to the Almighty. And people, 80 years, 70, their minds never got to this point. So we don't have to look down upon any human being. And as our scholar rightly indicated, when we're dealing with one another, we have to take into consideration the fact that he is a Muslim, number one. This should be the overriding thinking. Because there is a Quran that says, فَلَا تُزَكُّوا أَنفُسَكُمْ هُوَ أَعْلَمُ بِمَنِ اتَّقَى. That nobody should claim purity, that you are more God-fearing. It is only Allah who knows those who fear Him. But once we meet here as brothers, if you from your village, you are Hanafi, you from Bangladesh, Shafi, from this place, East Africa, Somalia, Shafi, Algeria, Maliki, West Africa, Maliki, from Saudi Arabia, Hanbali, yeah, we are all one. This should be the principle. We don't have to allow this madhahib, because these madhahib, if they had all lived at one place, we will find all of them under one banner of Islam.
Brother,